What's up, Tesla family? It's Ray J back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, and the overall markets. I'm going to break down some big news that came out involving Tesla in China and why tomorrow is going to be a very important day as we have lots of data coming out, not to mention Jerome Powell giving a speech, which could cause some volatility for the markets. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you sign up and deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 25 in total. And deposit $5,000, you're guaranteed 60 free stocks. The offer ends on June 3rd. Anyways, let's talk about what's happening to Tesla. So Tesla continued to push up amidst some news that came out involving China and Saudi Arabia. As of right now, it's holding up very nicely, but whether this move continues may depend a lot on what Jerome Powell says. Now, let me just say that when you zoom out of Tesla like this, it's still very bullish, and I still think that Tesla could run to the 370s, if not $400 area, approaching the really big robotaxi event in just a couple of weeks. However, there's no guarantee we continue from here to just go straight up to that level. We'll see if we get some consolidation, even a small dip first before it tries to continue to run, because we're at some tough resistance at this 350 area, not to mention the fact that even if we are bullish, right, that does not mean we have to just run every single day. There have been times when Tesla went up to about, for example, we ran up to about 322. We came all the way down to 314 before we continued to go higher. So even if we get a small little dip by a couple of points, we could still run and continue to push. So I just wanted to make that very clear. So let's talk about the news involving Tesla, why it's still bullish, even if we do see a small dip tomorrow, depending on how things end up going. I'm also going to break down what Jerome Powell could say that could cause lots of volatility. So to start things off, okay, there's been some news involving Robin Denholm, who's come out, and she has been continuing to sell more of her Tesla shares. She has sold nearly $200 million worth of Tesla stock in the last 6 months, according to an SEC filing. And despite that, okay, in total, since 2018, she has sold over $500 million worth of Tesla. That's the total proceeds based off filing reports. Now, she still holds between $50 and $80 million worth of Tesla shares at the current prices. But why is she cashing out? Has she lost all faith in Tesla, or could she just be getting ready for her retirement? Those are both possibilities, guys. You have to keep that in mind. But she is still holding, quite a nice amount of shares, and we'll see what happens moving forward. I don't necessarily think that this guarantees she lost all faith in Tesla. This could mean that she is just getting ready for her retirement or doing some other things for personal manners. So I don't like to make assumptions about that. She hasn't really disclosed all the reasonings yet. So you want to be very open about that. Secondly, despite that news, there's been some good news that came out about what's happening with China. So with the tariffs going down, Tesla's planning to start shipping components from China to the USA for the production of its Cybercab and semi-trucks by the end of this month. Now, keep in mind, we don't have a long-term deal with China yet. The deal with China is that we're just going to be slashing tariffs for about 90 days between both the US and China. We had the Chinese finance ministry come out and say that they want to decrease the tariffs for just 90 days. They wanted to decrease American tariffs to like 10%, even slash some of them, which is good news in itself. But you also want to keep in mind that we want to be careful because we'll see if this could last for the longer term. For the short term, however, this is a big victory for Tesla. It gives them an edge for the production of their Cybercab, and this could help them start to produce more of them for cheap so they can take advantage of the lower tariffs for now. This is great news because it illustrates how the de-escalation is really affecting Tesla and its counterparts, and overall, it's a great piece of news for Tesla to once again expand their production. I do believe the Cybercab is going to be very, very big for them, especially as they start to increase the robotaxi service, but we're going to see what happens during the big event in just a couple of weeks. It's going to be very exciting, and that's why I do see some more upside potential for the share price. Now, for more data, Wedbush said that Tesla is going to outperform the market. They're correct. Tesla has been outperforming to a large extent. That's why the price-price ratio is continuing to climb. Historically, Thursdays tend to be one of the weakest days of the week for Tesla, as they're green only about 47% of the time, but Fridays tend to be a lot better. We tend to see more volatility at noon and also at the second to last hour of the day at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And keep in mind, even though the period right over here around May tends to be about 53% of the time green, June tends to be green 80% of the time. So I do think that from here on out up until June, there's a lot of upside still coming, and Tesla is looking very, very resilient. So with that being said, like I said before, I do think Tesla could be running for 370 to 400 over the next couple of weeks. But for the short term, I'm going to be very careful here as we're hitting the very psychological $350 area. And whether this breaks depends on some factors. So I want to break down what those factors are. The first factor is Tesla news. What news comes up for Tesla for tomorrow? We've we've gotten lots of positive news about Saudi Arabia as we had the big deals that were signed. This has been causing the market to perform quite well. There's also been lots of talks about how the US and China have been agreeing to remove most restrictions, at least for 90 days, to continue to negotiate. And this is what's really helping them as time goes on. So I consider this awesome news, and I think this could really benefit both sides, especially companies like Tesla. So this is the first good piece of news. Secondly, I want to talk about what's happening with Saudi Arabia. So in Saudi Arabia, there's a big deal between the U.S. and them. They are committing to invest, hundreds of billions of dollars into the U.S., which is great news. And we're looking for big deals with the semiconductors from like AMD to Nvidia and many others. Also, Elon Musk was saying that there's going to be a radical change for the U.S. economies and the world economies because of the Optimus robots and the shift in AI. So Tesla wants to provide more of these robotaxis and Optimus robots to Saudi Arabia, which is not only a big market, but very, very open for lots of investments, which is big for them. Simultaneously, Nvidia and AMD, many of these big tech companies, even like Supermicro, are all benefiting from the Saudi Arabia deal. That's why we're seeing quite a bit of upside so far. Now, when it comes to President Trump, very recently, and I think this is the next big thing. He's been talking about Jerome Powell and interest rates. He mentioned that inflation is going down and prices are going down. Although that's not entirely true because the honest truth is that prices are still elevated, but the rate at which they're going up is what is truly slowing down. That's what inflation is. But regardless of that, he is correct about the fact that inflation is technically going down, at least according to what reports are telling us. And he is saying that Mr. Jerome Powell needs to cut rates as soon as possible. He's calling Jerome Powell Mr. Too Late Powell. He's saying that we need to see a cut as soon as possible because the effects on Americans is going to be bad. Donald Trump wants this to happen. This is what President Trump has been saying. And we're going to be watching to see what happens moving forward because we do have Jerome Powell giving a speech tomorrow. He's going to be speaking at 8:40 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Also, keep in mind in the morning, we have PPI data coming out. We're expecting the PPI numbers to be the same as before, if not a little bit lower. So for year over year, for core and all items PPI, we're expecting the same numbers. But on a month over month basis, we're expecting some decreases. So keep that in mind. Then we have Jerome Powell giving a speech at 8:40 a.m. tomorrow. And then we have some manufacturing numbers coming out at 9:15 a.m. So that could cause some volatility. There's lots of data before the market opens. But the big thing is going to be Jerome Powell. What does he say? Obviously, President Trump wants to see Jerome Powell and the Fed cut rates. We want to see them decrease rates as soon as possible. Will he go down the same path and say that there's lots of uncertainty about the tariffs and the Fed has to wait? Or will he start to say that they're open to a cut soon? If he says that, obviously the stock market may like that. So we will see what the big guy ends up saying. Tomorrow, we'll be very, very patient. We'll see what he says, if he says anything or not. That could cause a lot of volatility. Keep in mind that inflationary numbers are down right now. It shows the rate at which prices are increasing is slowing. That could also incentivize him to be more dovish. So it all depends on Jerome Powell going into tomorrow before market open. On top of this, tomorrow we have Alibaba and Walmart announcing their earnings. Sony had good earnings with revenue to be expected to grow in the high single digits, but tomorrow I'll be watching Alibaba and Walmart. When it comes to more data, right now, the fear and greed index is currently at greed. It's making up the majority of sentiment. Momentum is also becoming less fearful as we're seeing buyers stepping in. The puts call option ratio is dipping as lots of puts are being closed, and the VIX remains down, which is bullish for stocks. So what is the market going to do? It depends on what Jerome Powell says, but I will give you guys my prediction in just a second. Let's go over the bullish and bearish cases, and I'll talk about what's going to likely happen. So let's just say hypothetically we get lots of good PPI and industrial numbers, and Jerome Powell launches the markets. You want to see Tesla hold above 350. If it does that, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 355, then eventually 360. There is potential for Tesla to climb even higher if we get that. If we're bearish, you want to see Tesla fail at 340. If that fails us, we could retest 337 or below. So watch to see if we can hold 340 or not. Now, when you look at Tesla on the 30 minutes time frame, as you could tell, we like to hold this 20 EMA acting as a support, but there's a slight bearish divergence developing and volume was declining as time went on. So I do think there's going to be a risk of us returning to about 344 on Tesla, I do predict we're going to see a small dip. Could it be a bigger dip? It depends on what happens with the market. The whole market did actually show me some signals that could cause us to dip a little bit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Tesla dips like this and bounces, and then as time goes on, we could still break out like this. We might see a little bit of consolidation, a small pullback to like the lower 340s. We need 340 to hold at the very least to continue to bounce. If not, we could be dipping more. But I'm anticipating a move like this on Tesla where we consolidate for some time before we start to break out even more. So that's what I think is most likely going to happen to Tesla. So keep that in mind. That's my prediction for now. Based on what we're seeing on the 4-hour time frame, we're starting to show some signs of consolidation. And because volume is just declining a bit, this is completely healthy and not abnormal whatsoever. On the daily time frame, we're looking very, very bullish so far. We might consolidate a bit in the 340 area before this starts to launch for 360. So I see consolidation first, a little bit of consolidation tomorrow. We might be retesting like the mid to lower 340s. And then we're going to be looking for an attempt to push for 360 later on. So I hope that's as clear as possible. A temporary consolidation move is completely normal before this tries to push higher. And that's what I think is going to happen tomorrow. Of course, it depends on what the big guy Jerome Powell says. So we'll see just to be safe. But like I said before, I do anticipate consolidation like this before we start to push a lot higher towards the 360s. For SPY, okay, we're looking kind of weak here because we're seeing some signs of declining volume and also because we're hitting a tough resistance at 588. So if we get good news and Jerome Powell launches the markets, just hypothetically, we want to see SPY basically break out and hold above 588. If it does, we're looking for an attempt for 590 plus. If we're bearish, you want to see us lose 585. If that fails us, we're looking for 580 or below. My prediction is that we're going to be retesting 585. Now, it depends on what Jerome Powell says. Could we dip a little bit more to like 582? I could see that, 582 to 585. But as time goes on, we could still get bought back up and continue to push towards these higher levels. So I do see potential in us to be making a move just like this. So that's what I'm essentially seeing, at least as time goes on. So there is most definitely potential for that move to be coming. So just keep that in mind. And I'll be watching this very closely. I do anticipate a small pullback move to 585 to 582, but then we could still bounce and continue to climb higher for the 590s as time goes on for SPY. On the QQQ, it's the same thing. We're just kind of like range bound right here. We're also lacking volumes to really break out, and I think that we might not get a major catalyst except for Jerome Powell and our data. So if we break 520, we're bullish. We're looking for 525. If we have 517, if it doesn't hold, we could be looking for a move down towards like 515, and then we'll see if we get a big bounce towards the 520s. My prediction is that this might retest this 515 to 517 zone, consolidate before it tries to bounce like this. So look for a small dip and consolidation around 515, and we'll see if we get some kind of rebound. That's what I'm looking for on the triple Q. Now, the Russell is already showing signs that wants to slow down because we're making lower highs here. Notice that we have this 20 EMA around 205, then we have 202, which is where the gap is. So we have this high here, we came down, made a lower high. Now we're looking for basically 205 to 202, and we'll see if we get a big bounce off this or not. To be bullish, you want to get back above 210 to push higher. If we lose 205, we're looking for a dip back down. I am favoring this downside move to fill this gap before we see some kind of rebound, so keep that in mind. For ES, we're looking bullish. We're making higher highs and higher lows. However, what might drag SPY down is that ES is just barely holding 5,900. So I wouldn't be surprised if we dipped to like 58.80 to 58.50. But then we could still bounce off this and continue to go higher like that. Why do I say this? Because we like to bounce near our 1520 EMAs, and the chart still remains bullish. But for the short term, we might see a small pullback. We might not hold 5,900. We're just barely holding on to this, and there might be some kind of downside move. If we break 5,950, we could remain bullish and continue to push. If we lose 5,800, we could be turning more bearish. But I do think it's going to be a mix of both, where we see a small pullback move like this before it tries to rebound and make a big bounce like this. Now, it depends on what Jerome Powell says tomorrow, so we'll see about that, but that's what I'm eyeing so far. On NQ, we have 21,400 to 21,500 as a tough resistance. We could be returning to 21,000 flats, and we'll see if we bounce and start pushing higher towards the much higher 21,000s. But if we lose 20,500, we're looking for a bigger decline to start dipping lower. I don't think it's going to happen like this. I think we might see a temporary dip to the lower 21,000s, but then we could try to bounce as time goes on. We're seeing volume is slowing. If volume does continue to slow like this, and if we get a PPO crossover with this bearish divergence, this could cause us to dip to the lower 21,000s before we see some buyers defend. For others out there, such as Bitcoin, we're just consolidating for now. trading sideways for the time being. So I do anticipate a move like this to continue. And we'll see how we end up reacting to about 101,200. Do we bounce off this and continue to push, or do we come back down? So I do see consolidation continuing. For Tesla, like I said before, we're looking quite bullish overall, but we might see a little bit of consolidation first before this bounces higher for the 360s. Could consolidate, even come down a little bit towards the lower 340s before it bounces for 360. That's what I'm eyeing so far on Tesla. On NVIDIA, we're doing a great job at holding it, but we have a tough resistance at 137. So it depends if we break this or not. It's still very strong looking with the Saudi Arabia deal. If we hold above 137, we're looking for an attempt for 140. If we can't hold above 137, this might turn down towards 132.5 or so to 133. And even if we do come down a bit, we could still reaccumulate and start bouncing for the 137 plus area for a move just like this. So nice accumulation right over here. Nice upside potential remains for NVIDIA, but we may cool off first to 133 to 130 before it tries to bounce. On Apple, it's the same thing. We're trying to push for consolidating right now. Now, if Jerome Powell launches us, we're looking for 215 plus. If we lose 210, we're looking for a move back down. I wouldn't be surprised if we retest 210. We have to see if that holds. If not, 207 could be coming, and we'll see if we rebound off of that. So give this some time. But that's what I'm essentially eyeing, at least thus far. For Netflix, we're looking a bit more bullish. We could be looking for an attempt to push to basically 1115. We'll see what kind of reaction we get as time goes on. For Microsoft, we're looking bullish. We're looking for basically 411. If that doesn't hold, we're looking for 400. So we'll have to see what kind of reaction we get here if 411 holds. If not, the lower 400s could be coming. We'll see if we come down to fill this gap or not before this starts bouncing. So that's what I'm seeing for MSTR. For Celsius, we're bullish looking. We could come down towards 38, and we'll see if we rebound for 40. So give this some time. For Supermicro, we got a nice breakout right here. We're looking for an attempt to break out more. But there is a tough resistance right over here around this 45 area. So in case we do come down to like 42 to 40, we could cool off a bit before it starts to bounce more. We're kind of overbought right now, so seeing a small pullback to 42 to 40 would be healthy before this continues to go. That's what I'm looking for on Supermicro for now, looking at the current setup, but it's still bullish, even if we get a small pullback. Palantir is bullish, but there's a slight bearish divergence here. We could return, we could return to 127 or so before it tries to bounce. But overall, it still remains a lot more bullish, and there is upside potential for 135 plus. For Rivian, we're forming a flag right now. We could be looking for this breakout soon. It might consolidate a bit and dip a bit before it starts to break out like this. Still looks bullish nonetheless in terms of the setup. We got a rejection on SoFi and a slight bearish divergence. Could be retesting 13.5 to this gap fill to the low 13s, and we'll see if we rebound off that or not. AMD is looking bullish, nice accumulation. We need to break and hold above 121 to continue. We also have support at 113, so watch to see how this ends up going. There's a wick forming here, so that does typically signify we might be dipping to 115 or so before this tries to bounce, but I could be looking for a dip lower towards this resistance becoming support near 115. For ARM, it's looking more bullish so long as we don't lose 132.5. We're favoring a push higher for 136.5 to 138. These are the levels right over here. So I see potential for us to push back up towards these higher zones. There is upside for 135 plus. PayPal has a double top here, which is a little bit concerning to me because we're lacking volume. So the problem with PayPal is that we're not breaking out yet and we're forming these wicks like this. So we might be coming back down towards 71.4, and we'll see if we bounce. There's a gap to fill below, so I do see the 71s before we see a big move. Coinbase is bullish. It could be looking for 265 to 270 before it turns. Might go a bit higher before it slows down just a little bit, but then it could still bounce after that to continue. But there might be a little bit more upside coming for 265, and we'll see if we turn. For Amazon, we're looking bullish overall, but there might be a small pullback move right here towards 205. So we could be retesting 205 to 207. We'll see if we bounce, so give it some time. For Meta, we're just consolidating, so we could be dipping back down towards 615. We'll see what kind of reaction we get here. We're overall bullish in terms of the trend, but this might cool off to about 650. Microsoft is on a very, very nice uptrend, but we could be dipping towards this 450 area before we see some kind of rebound, so give that some time to develop. We'll see what kind of reaction we get, but I wouldn't be surprised if Microsoft retests 450 flat, if not 445 near the 20 EMA before it tries to bounce. Google is looking good, but there's a tough resistance around 167. We could cool off, retest 165 before it tries to bounce like this. Very bullish setup. It could keep pushing for the 170s. Might cool off first to 165 to 160 before it tries to rebound. For GJT, look for a retest of 25.7 to 25. Might be dipping to the 25s before it tries to bounce. The VIX is trying to rebound here. It might be retesting 19.8, which signifies the market may cool off a little bit. The 10-year is looking bullish as we're breaking out, and so is the dollar. The dollar has an inverse head and shoulders like setup, and it could be trying to push for basically 101.5, which could be bearish for the markets. So what's my view of the market? I think Tesla is very bullish. It could be looking for 370 to 400 approaching the big robotaxi event. But for the short term, we'll see if Tesla consolidates right here near 350. We might see some consolidation, even a small dip towards the lower 340s. It might consolidate in this range for now before we get another continuation higher over the next couple of weeks. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day, and I'll be back very soon with another update. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Have a good one, and peace out.